Chapter 11 The Egoist. I do not think Poirot had expected any other answer to his question. All the same, he shook his head sadly. He remained lost in thought. Jenny Driver leant forward, her elbows on the table. "And now," she said, "am I going to be told anything?" "Mademoiselle," said Poirot, "first of all let me compliment you. Your answers to my questions have been singularly intelligent. Clearly you have brains, mademoiselle. You ask whether I am going to tell you anything. I answer, not very much. I will tell you just a few bare facts, mademoiselle." He paused and then said quietly, "Last night Lord Edgware was murdered in his library. At 10 o'clock yesterday evening, a lady, whom I believe to have been your friend Miss Adams, came to the house, asked to see Lord Edgware, and announced herself as Lady Edgware. She wore a golden wig, and was made up to resemble the real Lady Edgware, who, as you probably know, is Miss Jane Wilkinson, the actress. Miss Adams, if it were she, only remained a few moments. She left the house at 5 minutes past 10, but she did not return home until after midnight. She went to bed, having taken an overdose of veronal. Now, mademoiselle, you see the point, perhaps, of some of the questions I have been asking you." Jenny drew a deep breath. "Yes," she said, "I see now. I believe you're right, Monsieur Poirot. Right about its having been Carlotta, I mean. For one thing, she bought a new hat off me yesterday." "A new hat?" "Yes. She said she wanted one to shade the left side of her face." Here I must insert a few words of explanation, as I do not know when these words will be read. I have seen many fashions of hats in my time. The cloche that shaded the face so completely that one gave up in despair the task of recognizing one's friends, the tilted forward hat, the hat attached airily to the back of the head, the beret, and many other styles. In this particular June, the hat of the moment was shaped like an inverted soup plate, and was worn attached, as if by suction, over one ear, leaving the other side of the face and hair open to inspection. "These hats are usually worn on the right side of the head?" asked Poirot. The little modiste nodded. "But we keep a few to be worn on the opposite side," she explained, "because there are people who much prefer their profile to the left, or who have a habit of parting hair on one side only. Now, would there be any special reason for Carlotta's wanting that side of her face to be in shadow?" I remembered that the door of the house in Regent Gate opened to the left, so that anyone entering would be in full view of the butler that side. I also remembered that Jane Wilkinson, so I had noticed the other night, had a tiny mole at the corner of the left eye. I said as much excitedly. Poirot agreed, nodding his head vigorously. "It is so. It is so. Vous avez parfaitement raison. Hastings, that explains the purchase of that." "Monsieur Poirot?" Jenny sat suddenly bolt upright. "You don't think, you don't for one moment think that Carlotta did it? Killed him, I mean. You can't think that. Not just because she spoke so bitterly about him." "I do not think so. But it is curious all the same that she should have spoken so, I mean. I would like to know the reason for it. What had he done? What did she know of him to make her speak in such a fashion?" "I don't know, but she didn't kill him. She was, well, too refined." Poirot nodded approvingly. "Yes, yes, you put that very well. It is a point psychological. I agree. This was a scientific crime, but not a refined one." "Scientific?" "The murderer knew exactly where to strike so as to reach the vital nerve centers at the base of the skull where it joins the cord." "Looks like a doctor," said Jenny thoughtfully. "Does Miss Adams know any doctors? I mean, was any particular doctor a friend of hers?" Jenny shook her head. "Never heard of one. Not over here, anyway." Another question. "Did Miss Adams wear a pince nez?" "Glasses? Never." "Ah!" Poirot frowned. A vision rose in my mind. A doctor smelling of carbolic, short-sighted eyes magnified by powerful lenses. Absurd. By the way, did Miss Adams know Brian Martin, the film actor? Why, yes. She used to know him as a child. She told me, I don't think she saw much of him, though. Just once in a while. She told me she thought he got very swollen-headed. She looked at her watch and uttered an exclamation. Goodness, I must fly. Have I helped you at all, Mojo Poirot? You have. I shall ask you for further help by and by. It's yours. Someone staged this devilry. We've got to find out who it is. She gave us a quick shake of the hand, flashed her white teeth in a sudden smile, and left us with characteristic abruptness. An interesting personality, said Poirot as he paid the bill. I like her, I said. It is always a pleasure to meet a quick mind. A little hard, perhaps, I reflected. The shock of her friend's death did not upset her as much as I should have thought it would have done. She is not the sort that weeps, certainly, agreed Poirot dryly. Did you get what you hoped from the interview? He shook his head. No, I hoped, very much I hoped to get a clue to the personality of D, the person who gave her the little gold box. There I have failed. Unfortunately, Charlotte Adams was a reserved girl. She was not one to gossip about her friends or her possible love affairs. On the other hand, the person who suggested the hoax may not have been a friend at all. It may have been a mere acquaintance who proposed it, doubtless for some sporting reason, on a money basis. This person may have seen the gold box she carried about with her and made some opportunity to discover what it contained. But how on earth did they get her to take it? And when? Well, there was the time during which the flat door was open, when the maid was out posting a letter. Not that that satisfies me. It leaves too much to chance. But now, to work. We have still two possible clues. Which are? The first is the telephone call to a Victoria number. It seems to me quite a probability that Charlotte Adams would ring up on her return to announce her success. On the other hand, where was she between 5 minutes past 10 and midnight? She may have had an appointment with the instigator of the hoax. In that case, the telephone call may have been merely one to a friend. What is the second clue? That I do have hopes for. The letter, Hastings. The letter to the sister. It is possible, I only say possible, that in that she may have described the whole business. She would not regard it as a breach of faith, since the letter would not be read till a week later, and in another country at that. Amazing, if that's so. We must not build too much upon it, Hastings. It is a chance, that is all. No, we must work now from the other end. What do you call the other end? A careful study of those who profited in any degree by Lord Edgware's death. I shrugged my shoulders. Apart from his nephew and his wife, and the man the wife wanted to marry, added Poirot. The Duke? He is in Paris. Quite so, but you cannot deny that he is an interested party. Then there are the people in the house, the butler, the servants. Who knows what grudges they may have had? But I think myself our first point of attack should be a further interview with Mademoiselle Jane Wilkinson. She is shrewd. She may be able to suggest something. Once more we made our way to the Savoy. We found the lady surrounded by boxes and tissue paper, whilst exquisite black draperies were strewn over the back of every chair. Jane had a rapt and serious expression, and was just trying on yet another small black hat before the glass. Why, Monsieur Poirot, sit down. That is, if there's anything to sit on. Alice, clear something, will you? Madame, you look charming. Jane looked serious. I don't want exactly to play the hypocrite, Monsieur Poirot, but one must observe appearances, don't you think? I think I ought to be careful. Oh, by the way, I've had the sweetest telegram from the Duke. From Paris? Yes, from Paris. Guarded, of course, and supposed to be condolences, but put so that I could read between the lines. My felicitations, madame. Bonjour, Poirot. She clasped her hands. Her husky voice dropped. She looked like an angel about to give vent to thoughts of exquisite holiness. I've been thinking. It all seems so miraculous, if you know what I mean. Here I am, all my troubles over. No tiresome business of divorce. No bothers. Just my path cleared and all plain sailing. It makes me feel almost religious, if you know what I mean. I held my breath. Poirot looked at her, his head a little on one side. She was quite serious. That is how it strikes you, madame, eh? Things happen right for me, said Jane in a sort of awed whisper. I've thought, and I've thought lately, if Edgware was to die. And there he's dead. It's almost like an answer to prayer. Poirot cleared his throat. I cannot say I look at it quite like that, madame. Somebody killed your husband. She nodded. Why, of course. Has it not occurred to you to wonder who that someone was? She stared at him. Does it matter? I mean, what's that to do with it? The Duke and I can be married in about 4 or 5 months. With difficulty, Poirot controlled himself. Yes, madam, I know that. But apart from that, has it not occurred to you to ask yourself, who killed your husband? No. She seemed quite surprised by the idea. We could see her thinking about it. Does it not interest you to know? Asked Poirot. Not very much, I'm afraid, she admitted. I suppose the police will find out. They're very clever, aren't they? So it is said. I, too, am going to make it my business to find out. Are you? How funny. Why funny? Well, I don't know. Her eyes strayed back to the clothes. She slipped on a satin cloak and studied herself in the glass. You do not object, eh? Said Poirot, his eyes twinkling. Why, of course not, Monsieur Poirot. I should just love you to be clever about it all. I wish you every success. Madame, I want more than your wishes. I want your opinion. Opinion? Said Jane absently, as she twisted her head over her shoulder. What on? Who do you think likely to have killed Lord Edgware? Jane shook her head. I haven't any idea. She wriggled her shoulders experimentally and took up the hand-glass. Madame, said Poirot in a loud, emphatic voice, who do you think killed your husband? This time it got through. Jane threw him a startled glance. Geraldine, I expect, she said. Who is Geraldine? Who is Geraldine? But Jane's attention was gone again. Alice, take this up a little on the right shoulder. So, what, Monsieur Poirot? Geraldine's his daughter. No, Alice, the right shoulder. That's better. Oh, must you go, Monsieur Poirot? I'm terribly grateful for everything. I mean, for the divorce, even though it isn't necessary after all. I shall always think you were wonderful. I only saw Jane Wilkinson twice again. Once on the stage, once when I sat opposite her at a luncheon party. I always think of her as I saw her then, absorbed heart and soul in clothes, her lips carelessly throwing out the words that were to influence Poirot's further actions, her mind concentrated firmly and beatifically on herself. Épatant, said Poirot with reverence as we emerged into the Strand. End of chapter 11. Chapter 12. The Daughter. There was a letter sent by hand lying on the table when we got back to our rooms. Poirot picked it up, slid it open with his usual neatness, and then laughed. What is it you say? Talk of the devil? See here, Hastings. I took the note from him. The paper was stamped, 17 Regent Gate, and was written in very upright, characteristic handwriting, which looked easy to read and, curiously enough, was not. Dear Sir, it ran, I hear you were at the house this morning with the inspector. I am sorry not to have had the opportunity of speaking to you. If convenient to yourself, I should be much obliged if you could spare me a few minutes any time this afternoon. Yours truly, Geraldine Marsh. Curious, I said. I wonder why she wants to see you. Is it curious that she should want to see me? You're not polite, my friend. Poirot has the most irritating habit of joking at the wrong moment. We will go round at once, my friend, he said, and lovingly brushing an imagined speck of dust from his hat, he put it on his head. Jane Wilkinson's careless suggestion that Geraldine might have killed her father seemed to me particularly absurd. Only a particularly brainless person could have suggested it. I said as much to Poirot. Brains? Brains? What do we really mean by the term? In your idiom, you would say that Jane Wilkinson has the brains of a rabbit. That is a term of disparagement. But consider the rabbit for a moment. He exists and multiplies, does he not? That, in nature, is a sign of mental superiority. The lovely Lady Edgware, she does not know history, or geography, nor the classic Sandu. The name of Lao Tse would suggest to her a prize Pekingese dog, the name of Molière, Maison de Coutre. But when it comes to choosing clothes, to making rich and advantageous marriages, and to getting her own way, her success is phenomenal. The opinion of a philosopher as to who murdered Lord Edgware would be no good to me. The motive for murder from a philosopher's point of view would be the greatest good, of the greatest number. And as that is difficult to decide, few philosophers are murderers. But a careless opinion from Lady Edgware might be useful to me, because her point of view would be materialistic and based on a knowledge of the worst side of human nature. Perhaps there's something in that, I conceded. No voice, said Poirot. I am curious to know why the young lady wishes so urgently to see me. It is a natural desire, I said, getting my own back. You said so a quarter of an hour ago. The natural desire to see something unique at close quarters. Perhaps it is you, my friend, who made an impression on her heart the other day, replied Poirot as he rang the bell. I recalled the startled face of the girl who had stood in the doorway. I could still see those burning dark eyes in the white face. That momentary glimpse had made a great impression on me. We were shown upstairs to a big drawing room, and in a minute or two Geraldine Marsh came to us there. The impression of intensity which I had noticed before was heightened on this occasion. This tall, thin, white-faced girl with her big, haunting black eyes was a striking figure. She was extremely composed in view of her youth, remarkably so. It is very good of you to come so promptly, Monsieur Poirot, she said. I'm sorry to have missed you this morning. You were lying down. Yes, Miss Carroll, my father's secretary, insisted. She's been very kind. There was a queer, grudging note in the girl's voice that puzzled me. In what way can I be of service to you, mademoiselle? Asked Poirot. She hesitated a minute and then said, On the day before my father was killed, you came to see him. Yes, mademoiselle. Why, did he send for you? Poirot did not reply for a moment. He seemed to be deliberating. I believe now that it was a cleverly calculated move on his part. He wanted to goad her into further speech. She was, he realized, of the impatient type. She wanted things in a hurry. Was he afraid of something? Tell me, I must know. Who was he afraid of? Why? What did he say to you? Oh, why can't you speak? I had thought that forced composure was not natural. It had soon broken down. She was leaning forward now, her hands twisting themselves nervously on her lap. What passed between Lord Edgware and myself was in confidence, said Poirot slowly. His eyes never left her face. Then it was about... it must have been something to do with the family. Oh, you sit there and torture me. Why won't you tell me? It's necessary for me to know. It's necessary, I tell you. Again, very slowly, Poirot shook his head, apparently a prey to deep perplexity. Monsieur Poirot, she drew herself up. I'm his daughter. It's my right to know. What my father dreaded on the last day but one of his life. It isn't fair to leave me in the dark. It isn't fair to him not to tell me. Were you so devoted to your father, then, mademoiselle? Asked Poirot gently. She drew back as though stung. Fond of him, she whispered. Fond of him. I... And suddenly her self-control snapped. Peals of laughter broke from her. She lay back in her chair and laughed and laughed. It's so funny, she gasped. It's so funny to be asked that. That hysterical laughter had not passed unheard. The door opened and Miss Carroll came in. She was firm and efficient. Now, Geraldine, my dear, that won't do. No, hush now, I insist. No, stop it. I mean it. Stop it at once. Her determined manner had its effect. Geraldine's laughter grew fainter. She wiped her eyes and sat up. I'm sorry, she said in a low voice. I've never done that before. Miss Carroll was still looking at her anxiously. I'm all right now, Miss Carroll. It was idiotic. She smiled suddenly, a queer, bitter smile that twisted her lips. She sat up very straight in her chair and looked at no one. He asked me, she said in a cold, clear voice, if I had been very fond of my father. Miss Carroll made a sort of indeterminate cluck. It denoted irresolution on her part. Geraldine went on, her voice high and scornful. I wonder if it is better to tell lies or the truth. The truth, I think. I wasn't fond of my father. I hated him. Geraldine, dear, why pretend? You didn't hate him because he couldn't touch you. You were one of the few people in the world that he couldn't get at. You saw him as the employer who paid you so much a year. His rages and his queernesses didn't interest you. You ignored them. I know what you'd say. Everyone has got to put up with something. You were cheerful and uninterested. You're a very strong woman. You're not really human. But then you could have walked out of the house any minute. I couldn't. I belonged. Really, Geraldine, I don't think it's necessary to go into all this. Fathers and daughters often don't get on. But the less said in life, the better, I found. Geraldine turned her back on her. She addressed herself to Poirot. Monsieur Poirot, I hated my father. I'm glad he's dead. It means freedom for me. Freedom and independence. I'm not at the least anxious to find his murderer. For all we know, the person who killed him may have had reasons, ample reasons, justifying that action. Poirot looked at her thoughtfully. That is a dangerous principle to adopt, mademoiselle. Will hanging someone else bring father back to life? No, said Poirot dryly, but it may save other innocent people from being murdered. I don't understand. A person who has once killed, mademoiselle, nearly always kills again, sometimes again and again. I don't believe it. Not a real person. You mean not a homicidal maniac? But yes, it is true. One life is removed, perhaps after a terrific struggle with a murderer's conscience. Then danger threatens. The second murder is morally easier. At the slightest threatening of suspicion, a third follows, and little by little an artistic pride arises. It is a métier. To kill. It is done at last, almost for pleasure. The girl had hidden her face in her hands. Horrible. Horrible. It isn't true. And supposing I told you that it had already happened, that already, to save himself, the murderer has killed a second time. What's that, Monsieur Poirot? Cried Miss Carroll. Another murder? Where? Who? Poirot gently shook his head. It was an illustration only. I ask pardon. Oh, I see. For a moment I really thought. Now, Geraldine, if you finish talking errant nonsense. You are on my side, I see, said Poirot with a little bow. Don't believe in capital punishment, said Miss Carroll briskly. Otherwise I am certainly on your side. Society must be protected. Geraldine got up. She smoothed back her hair. I'm sorry, she said. I'm afraid I've been making rather a fool of myself. You still refuse to tell me why my father called you in? Called him in? Said Miss Carroll in lively astonishment. You misunderstand, Miss Marsh. I have not refused to tell you. Poirot was forced to come out into the open. I was only considering how far that interview might have been said to be confidential. Your father did not call me in. I sought an interview with him on behalf of a client. That client was Lady Edgware. Oh, I see. An extraordinary expression came over the girl's face. I thought at first it was disappointment. Then I saw it was relief. I've been very foolish, she said slowly. I thought my father had perhaps thought himself menaced by some danger. It was stupid. You know, Monsieur Poirot, you gave me quite a turn just now, said Miss Carroll, when you suggested that woman had done a second murder. Poirot did not answer her. He spoke to the girl. Do you believe Lady Edgware committed the murder, mademoiselle? She shook her head. No, I don't. I can't see her doing a thing like that. She's much too artificial. I don't see who else could have done it, said Miss Carroll, and I don't think women of that kind have got any moral sense. It needn't have been her, argued Geraldine. She may have come here and just had an interview with him and gone away, and the real murderer may have been some lunatic who got it afterwards. All murderers are mentally deficient, of that I'm assured, said Miss Carroll. Internal gland secretion. At that moment the door opened and a man came in, then stopped awkwardly. Sorry, he said. I didn't know anyone was in here. Geraldine made a mechanical introduction. My cousin, Lord Edgware, Monsieur Poirot. It's all right, Ronald. You're not interrupting. Sure, Dina? How do you do, Monsieur Poirot? Are your gray cells functioning over our particular family mystery? I cast my mind back, trying to remember that round, pleasant, vacuous face, the eyes with slight pouches underneath them, the little mustache marooned like an island in the middle of the expanse of face. Of course, it was Carlotta Adams' escort on the night of the supper party in Jane Wilkinson's suite. Captain Ronald Marsh, now Lord Edgware. End of chapter 12. Chapter 13. The Nephew. The new Lord Edgware's eye was a quick one. He noticed the slight start I gave. Ah, you've got it, he said amiably. Aunt Jane's little supper party. Just a shade bottle, wasn't I? But I fancied it passed quite unperceived. Poirot was saying goodbye to Geraldine Marsh and Miss Carroll. I'll come down with you, said Ronald genially. He led the way down the stairs, talking as he went. Rum thing, life. Kicked out one day, lord of the manor the next. My late unlamented uncle kicked me out, 3 years ago. But I expect you know all about that, Monsieur Poirot. I had heard the fact mentioned, yes, replied Poirot composedly. Naturally. A thing of that kind is sure to be dug up. The earnest sleuth can't afford to miss it. He grinned. Then he threw open the door to the dining room. Have a spot before you go. Poirot refused. So did I, but the young man mixed himself a drink and continued to talk. Here's to murder, he said cheerfully. In the space of one short night, I'm converted from the creditor's despair to the tradesman's hope. Yesterday ruin stared me in the face. Today, all his affluence. God bless Aunt Jane. He drained his glass. Then, with a slight change of manner, he spoke to Poirot. Seriously, though, Monsieur Poirot, what are you doing here? 4 days ago, Aunt Jane was dramatically declaiming, "Who will rid me of this insolent tyrant?" And lo and behold, she's ridded. Not by your agency, I hope. The Perfect Crime by Hercule Poirot, ex-sleuth-hound. Poirot smiled. "I am here this afternoon in answer to a note from Miss Geraldine Marsh." A discreet answer, eh? No, Monsieur Poirot, what are you really doing here? For some reason or other, you're interesting yourself in my uncle's death. I am always interested in murder, Lord Edgware. But you don't commit it. Very cautious. You should teach Aunt Jane caution. Caution and a shade more camouflage. You'll excuse me calling her Aunt Jane. It amuses me. Did you see her blank face when I did it the other night? Hadn't the foggiest notion who I was. En vérité? No. I was kicked out of here 3 months before she came along. The fatuous expression of good nature on his face failed for a moment. Then he went on lightly. Beautiful woman, but no subtlety. Methods are rather crude, eh? Poirot shrugged his shoulders. It is possible. Ronald looked at him curiously. I believe you think she didn't do it. So she's got round you too, has she? I have a great admiration for beauty, said Poirot evenly, but also for evidence. He brought the last word out very quietly. Evidence, said the other sharply. Perhaps you do not know, Lord Edgware, that Lady Edgware was at the party at Chiswick last night, at the time she was supposed to have been here. Ronald swore. So she went after all. How like a woman. At 6 o'clock she was throwing her weight about, declaring that nothing on earth would make her go, and I suppose about 10 minutes later, after she'd changed her mind. When planning a murder, never depend upon a woman doing what she says she'll do. That's how the best laid plans of murder gang agley. No, Monsieur Poirot, I'm not incriminating myself. Oh, yes, don't think I can't read what's passing through your mind. Who's the natural suspect? The well-known wicked ne'er-do-well nephew. He leaned back in his chair, chuckling. I'm saving your little gray cells for you, Monsieur Poirot. No need for you to hunt round for someone who saw him in the offing, when Aunt Jane was declaring she never, never, never would go out that night, etc. I was there. So ask yourself, did the wicked nephew in very truth come here last night, disguised in a fair wig and a bear's hat? Seemingly enjoying the situation, he surveyed us both. Poirot, his head a little on one side, was regarding him with close attention. I felt rather uncomfortable. I had a motive. Oh, yes, motive admitted. And I'm going to give you a present of a very valuable and significant piece of information. I called to see my uncle yesterday morning. Why? To ask for money. Yes, lick your lips over that. To ask for money. And I went away without getting any. And that same evening, that very same evening, Lord Edgware dies. Good title, that, by the way. Lord Edgware Dies. Look well at a bookstall. He paused. Still Poirot said nothing. I'm really flattered by attention, Monsieur Poirot. Captain Hastings looks as though he had seen a ghost, or were going to see one any minute. Don't get so strung up, my dear fellow. Wait for the anticlimax. Well, where were we? Oh, yes, case against the wicked nephew. Guilt is to be thrown on the hated aunt by marriage. Nephew, celebrated at one time for acting female parts, does his supreme histrionic effort. In a girlish voice he announces himself as Lady Edgware and sidles past the butler with mincing steps. No suspicions are aroused. "Jane!" cries my fond uncle. "George!" I squeak. I fling my arms about his neck and neatly insert the penknife. The next details are purely medical and can be omitted. Exit the spurious lady, and so to bed at the end of a good day's work. He laughed, and rising, poured himself out another whiskey and soda. He returned slowly to his chair. Works out well, doesn't it? But you see, here comes the crux of the matter. The disappointment. The annoying sensation of having been led up the garden. For now, Monsieur Poirot, we come to the alibi. He finished off his glass. I always find alibis very enjoyable, he remarked. Whenever I happen to be reading a detective story, I sit up and take notice when the alibi comes along. this is a remarkably good alibi. 3 strong, and Jewish at that. In plainer language, Mr., Mrs., and Miss Dortheimer, extremely rich and extremely musical. They have a box at Covent Garden. Into that box they invite young men with prospects, as good a one, shall we say, as they can hope to get. Do I like the opera? Frankly, no. But I enjoy the excellent dinner in Grosvenor Square first, and I also enjoy an excellent supper somewhere else afterwards, even if I do have to dance with Rachel Dortheimer and have a stiff arm for 2 days afterward. So you see, Mojo Poirot, there you are. When Uncle's lifeblood is flowing, I am whispering cheerful nothings into the diamond-encrusted ears of the fair, I beg your pardon, dark Rachel in a box at Covent Garden. Her long nose is quivering with emotion, and so you see, Monsieur Poirot, why, I can afford to be so frank. He leaned back in his chair. I hope I have not bored you. Any questions to ask? I can assure you that I have not been bored, said Poirot. Since you are so kind, there is one little question that I would like to ask. Delighted. How long, Lord Edgware, have you known Miss Carlotta Adams? Whatever the young man had expected, it certainly had not been this. He sat up sharply with an entirely new expression on his face. Why on earth do you want to know that? What's that got to do with what we've been talking about? I was curious, that was all. For the other, you have explained so fully everything there is to explain that there is no need for me to ask questions. Ronald shot a quick glance at him. It was almost as though he did not care for Poirot's amiable acquiescence. He would, I thought, have preferred him to be more suspicious. Carlotta Adams, let me see, about a year, a little more. I got to know her last year when she gave her first show. You knew her well? Pretty well. She's not the sort of girl you ever get to know frightfully well, reserved and all that. But you liked her. Ronald stared at him. I wish I knew why you were so interested in the lady. Was it because I was with her the other night? Yes, I like her very much. She's sympathetic, listens to a chap and makes him feel he's something of a fellow after all. Poirot nodded. I comprehend. Then you will be sorry. Sorry? What about? That she is dead. What? Ronald sprang up in astonishment. Carlotta dead? He looked absolutely dumbfounded by the news. You're pulling my leg, Monsieur Poirot. Carlotta was perfectly well the last time I saw her. When was that? Asked Poirot quickly. Day before yesterday, I think. I can't remember. Tout de même. She is dead? It must have been frightfully sudden. What was it? A street accident? Poirot looked at the ceiling. No, she took an overdose of veronal. Oh, I say. Poor kid. How frightfully sad. N'est-ce pas? I am sorry. And she was getting on so well. She was going to get her kid sister over and had all sorts of plans. Dash it. I'm more sorry than I can say. Yes, said Poirot. It is sad to die when you are young, when you do not want to die, when all life is open before you and you have everything to live for. Ronald looked at him curiously. I don't think I quite get you, Monsieur Poirot. No? Poirot rose and held out his hand. I express my thoughts a little strongly, perhaps, for I do not like to see youth deprived of its right to live, Lord Edgware. I feel very strongly about it. I wish you good day. Goodbye. As I opened the door, I almost collided with Miss Carroll. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, they told me you hadn't gone yet. I'd like a word with you, if I may. Perhaps you wouldn't mind coming up to my room. It's about that child, Geraldine, she said when we'd entered her sanctum, and she had closed her door. Yes, mademoiselle. She talked a lot of nonsense this afternoon. Now don't protest. Nonsense, that's what I call it, and that's what it was. She broods. I could see that she was suffering from overstrain, said Poirot gently. Well, to tell the truth, she hasn't had a very happy life. No one can pretend she has. Frankly, Monsieur Poirot, Lord Edgware was a peculiar man, not the sort of man who ought to have had anything to do with the upbringing of children. Quite frankly, he terrorized Geraldine. Poirot nodded. Yes, I should have imagined something of the kind. He was a peculiar man. I don't quite know how to put it, but he enjoyed seeing anyone afraid of him. It seemed to give him a morbid kind of pleasure. Quite so. He was an extremely well-read man, and a man of considerable intellect, but in some ways, well, I didn't come across that side of him myself, but it was there. I'm not really surprised his wife left him. This wife, I mean. I didn't approve of her, mind. I've no opinion of that young woman at all. But in marrying Lord Edgware, she got all and more than she deserved. Well, she left him, and no bones broken, as they say, but Geraldine couldn't leave him. For a long time he'd forget all about her, and then suddenly he'd remember, I sometimes think, though perhaps I shouldn't say it. Yes, yes, mademoiselle, say it. Well, I sometimes thought he revenged himself on the mother, his first wife, that way. She was a gentle creature, I believe, with a very sweet disposition. I've always been sorry for her. I shouldn't have mentioned all this, Monsieur Poirot, if it hadn't been for that very foolish outburst of Geraldine's just now. Things she said about hating her father. They might sound peculiar to anyone who didn't know. Thank you very much, mademoiselle. Lord Edgware, I fancy, was a man who would have done much better not to marry. Much better. He never thought of marrying for a third time? How could he? His wife was alive. By giving her her freedom, he would have been free himself. I should think he had had enough trouble with two wives as it was, said Miss Carroll grimly. So you think there would have been no question of a third marriage? There was no one? Think, mademoiselle. No one. Miss Carroll's color rose. I cannot understand the way you keep harping on the point. Of course there was no one. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14. 5 questions. Why did you ask Miss Carroll about the possibility of Lord Edgware's wanting to marry again? I asked with some curiosity as we were driving home. It just occurred to me that there was the possibility of such a thing, mon ami. Why? I've been searching in my mind for something to explain Lord Edgware's sudden volte-face regarding the matter of divorce. There is something curious there, my friend. Yes, I said thoughtfully, it is rather odd. You see, Hastings, Lord Edgware confirmed what Madame had told us. She had employed the lawyers of all kinds, but he refused to budge the inch. No, he would not agree to the divorce. And then, all of a sudden, he yields. Or so he says, I reminded him. Very true, Hastings. It is very just, the observation you make there. So he says. We have no proof whatever that that letter was written. Eh bien, on one part, ce Monjou is lying. For some reason he tells us the fabrication, the embroidery. Is it not so? Why, we do not know. But on the hypothesis that he did write that letter, there must have been a reason for doing so. Now, the reason that presents itself most naturally to the imagination is that he has suddenly met someone whom he desires to marry. That explains perfectly his sudden change of face. And so, naturally, I make the inquiries. Miss Carroll turned the idea down very decisively. I said, Yes, Miss Carroll, said Poirot in a meditative voice. Now what are you driving at? I asked with exasperation. Poirot was an adept at suggesting doubts by the tone of his voice. What reason should she have for lying about it? I asked. Accu? But you see, Hastings, it is difficult to trust her evidence. You think she's lying? But why? She looks a most upright person. That is just it. Between the deliberate falsehood and the disinterested inaccuracy, it is very hard to distinguish something. What do you mean? To deceive deliberately, that is one thing. But to be sure of your facts, of your ideas, and of their essential truth, that the details do not matter, that, my friend, is a special characteristic of particularly honest persons. Already, mark you, she has told us one lie. She said she saw Jane Wilkinson's face when she could not possibly have done so. Now, how did that come about? Look at it this way. She looks down and sees Jane Wilkinson in the hall. No doubt enters her head that it is Jane Wilkinson. She knows it is. She says she saw her face distinctly because, being so sure of her facts, exact details do not matter. It is pointed out to her that she could not have seen her face. Is that so? Well, what does it matter if she saw her face or not? It was Jane Wilkinson. And so with any other question, she knows. And so she answers questions in the light of her knowledge, not by reason of remembered facts. The positive witness should always be treated with suspicion, my friend. The uncertain witness who doesn't remember, isn't sure, will think a minute. Ah, yes, that's how it was, is infinitely more to be depended upon. Dear me, Poirot, I said, you upset all my preconceived ideas about witnesses. In reply to my question as to Lord's marrying again, she ridicules the idea, simply because it has never occurred to her. She will not take the trouble to remember whether any infinitesimal signs may have pointed that way. Therefore, we are exactly where we were before. She certainly did not seem at all taken aback when you pointed out she could not have seen Jane Wilkinson's face, I remarked thoughtfully. No, that is why I decided that she was one of those honestly inaccurate persons, rather than a deliberate liar. I can see no motive for deliberate lying, unless... True, that is an idea. What is? I asked eagerly. But Poirot shook his head. An idea suggested itself to me, but it is too impossible. Yes, much too impossible. And he refused to say more. She seems very fond of the girl, I said. Yes, she certainly was determined to assist at our interview. What was your impression of the Honorable Geraldine Marsh, Hastings? I was sorry for her, deeply sorry for her. You have always the tender heart, Hastings. Beauty and distress upsets you every time. Didn't you feel the same? He nodded gravely. Yes, she has not had a happy life. That is written very clearly on her face. At any rate, I said warmly, you realize how preposterous Jane Wilkinson's suggestion was, that she should have had anything to do with the crime, I mean. Doubtless her alibi is satisfactory, but Yop has not communicated it to me as yet. My dear Poirot, do you mean to say that even after seeing her and talking to her, you're still not satisfied and want an alibi? Eh bien, my friend, what is the result of seeing her and talking to her? We perceive that she has passed through great unhappiness. She admits that she hated her father, and is glad that he is dead, and she is deeply uneasy about what he may have said to us yesterday morning. And after that you say no alibi is necessary? Her mere frankness proves her innocence, I said warmly. Frankness is a characteristic of the family. The new Lord Edgware, with what a gesture he laid his cards on the table. He did indeed, I said, smiling at the remembrance. Rather an original method. Poirot nodded. He, what do you say, cuts the ground before our feet? From under, I corrected. Yes, it made us look rather foolish. What a curious idea. You may have looked foolish. I did not feel foolish in the least, and I do not think I looked it. On the contrary, my friend, I put him out of countenance. Did you? I said doubtfully, not remembering having seen any signs of anything of the kind. See, I listen, and at last I ask a question about something quite different. and that, you may have noticed, disconcerts our brave Mojo very much. You do not observe, Hastings." I thought his horror and astonishment at hearing of Carlotta Adams' death was genuine, I said. "I suppose you'll say it was a piece of clever acting." "Impossible to tell. I agree it seemed genuine." "Why do you think he flung all those facts at our head in that cynical way? Just for amusement?" "That is always possible. You English, you have the most extraordinary notions of humor. But it may have been policy. Facts that are concealed acquire a suspicious importance. Facts that are frankly revealed tend to be regarded as less important than they really are." The quarrel with his uncle that morning, for instance. "Exactly. He knows that the fact is bound to leak out, maybe, and he will parade it." "He's not so foolish as he looks." "Oh, he is not foolish at all. He has plenty of brains when he cares to use them. He sees exactly where he stands, and, as I said, he lays his cards on the table. You play the bridge, Hastings. Tell me, when does one do that?" "You play bridge yourself," I said, laughing. "You know well enough, when all the rest of the tricks are yours and you want to save time and get on to a new hand." "Yes, mon ami, that is all very true, but occasionally there is another reason. I have remarked it once or twice when playing with les dames. There is perhaps a little doubt. Eh bien, la dame, she throws down the cards, says, 'And all the rest are mine,' and gathers up the cards and cuts the new pack. And possibly the other players agree, especially if they are a little inexperienced. The thing is not obvious, mark you. It requires to be followed out. Halfway through dealing the next hand, one of the players thinks, 'Yes, but she would have to have taken over the fourth diamond in dummy, whether she wanted to or not. And then she would have had to lead the little club, and my 9 would have made.'" "So you think?" "I think, Hastings, that too much bravado is a very interesting thing. And I also think that it is time we dined. Un petit omelette, n'est pas? And after that, about 9 o'clock, I have one more visit I wish to make." "Where's that?" "We will dine first, Hastings, and until we drink our coffee, we will not discuss the case further. When engaged in eating, the brain should be the servant of the stomach." Poirot was as good as his word. We went to a little restaurant in Soho where he was well known, and there we had a delicious omelette, a sole, a chicken, and a baba room of which Poirot was inordinately fond. Then, as we sipped our coffee, Poirot smiled affectionately across the table at me. "My good friend," he said, "I depend upon you more than you know." I was confused and delighted by these unexpected words. He had never said anything of the kind to me before. Sometimes, secretly, I had felt slightly hurt. He seemed almost to go out of his way to disparage my mental powers. Although he did not think his own powers were flagging, I did realize suddenly that perhaps he had come to depend upon my aid more than he knew. "Yes," he said dreamily, "you may not always comprehend just how it is so, but you do often and often point the way." I could hardly believe my ears. "Really, Poirot," I stammered, "I'm awfully glad. I suppose I've learned a good deal from you one way or another." He shook his head. "Mais non, ce n'est pas. You have learned nothing." "Oh," I said, rather taken aback. "That is as it should be. No human being should learn from another. Each individual should develop his own powers to the uttermost, not try to imitate those of someone else. I do not wish you to be a second and inferior Poirot. I wish you to be the Supreme Hastings. And you are the Supreme Hastings. In you, Hastings, I find the normal mind almost perfectly illustrated." "I'm not abnormal, I hope," I said. "No, no. You are beautifully and perfectly balanced. In you, sanity is personified. Do you realize what that means to me? When the criminal mind sets out to do a crime, his first effort is to deceive. Who does he seek to deceive? The image in his mind is that of the normal man. There is probably no such thing, actually. It is a mathematical abstraction. but you come as near to realizing it as is possible. There are moments when you have flashes of brilliance, when you rise above average moments. I hope you will pardon me, when you descend to curious depths of obtuseness. But take it all for all, you are amazingly normal. Eh bien, how does this profit me? Simply in this way. As in a mirror, I see reflected in your mind exactly what the criminal wishes me to believe. That is terrifically helpful and suggestive. I did not quite understand. It seemed to me that what Poirot was saying was hardly complimentary. However, he quickly disabused me of that impression. I have expressed myself badly, he said quickly. You have an insight into the criminal mind which I myself lack. You showed me what the criminal wishes me to believe. It is a great gift. Insight, I said thoughtfully. Yes, perhaps I have got insight. I looked across the table at him. He was smoking his tiny cigarettes and regarding me with great kindliness. C'est cher, Hastings, he murmured. I have indeed much affection for you. I was pleased, but embarrassed, and hastened to change the subject. Come, I said in a businesslike manner, let us discuss the case. Eh bien? Poirot threw his head back. His eyes narrowed. He slowly puffed out smoke. Je me pose des questions, he said. Yes, I said eagerly. You too, doubtless. Certainly, I said, and also leaning back and narrowing my eyes, I threw out, Who killed Lord Edgware? Poirot immediately sat up and shook his head vigorously. No, not at all. Is it a question that? You are like someone who reads the detective story and who starts guessing each of the characters in turn, without rhyme or reason. Once, I agree, I had to do that myself. It was a very exceptional case. I will tell you about it one of these days. It was a feather in my cap. But of what were we speaking? Of the questions you were posing to yourself, I replied dryly. It was on the tip of my tongue to suggest that my real use to Poirot was to provide him with a companion to whom he could boast, but I controlled myself. If he wished to instruct, then let him. Come on, I said, let's hear them. That was all that the vanity of the man wanted. He leaned back again and resumed his former attitude. The first question we have already discussed. Why did Lord Edgware change his mind on the subject of divorce? One or two ideas suggest themselves to me on the subject. One of them you know. The second question I ask myself is, what happened to that letter? To whose interest was it that Lord Edgware and his wife should continue to be tied together? 3. What was the meaning of the expression on his face that you saw when you looked back yesterday morning on leaving the library? Have you any answer to that, Hastings? I shook my head. I can't understand it. You're sure that you didn't imagine it? Sometimes, Hastings, you have the imagination un peu vif. No, I shook my head vigorously. I'm quite sure I wasn't mistaken. Bien. Then it is a fact to be explained. My fourth question concerns those pince-nez. Neither Jane Wilkinson nor Carlotta Adams wore glasses. What then are the glasses doing in Carlotta Adams' bag? And for my fifth question, why did someone telephone to find out that Jane Wilkinson were Chiswick? And who was it? Those, my friend, are the questions with which I am tormenting myself. If I could answer those, I should feel happier in my mind. If I could even evolve a theory that explained them satisfactorily, my amour propre would not suffer so much. There are several other questions, I said. Such as? Who incited Carlotta Adams to this hoax? Where was she that evening before and after 10 o'clock? Who is D who gave her the golden box? Those questions are self-evident, said Poirot. There is no subtlety about them. They are simply things we do not know. They are questions of fact. We may get to know them any minute. My questions, mon ami, are psychological. The little grey cells of the brain. Poirot, I said desperately. I felt I must stop him at all costs. I could not bear to hear it all over again. You spoke of making a visit tonight. Poirot looked at his watch. "True," he said. "I will telephone and find out if it is convenient." He went away and returned a few minutes later. "Come," he said. "All is well." "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the house of Sir Montague Corner at Chiswick. I would like to know a little more about that telephone call." End of chapter 14.